My name is Michael Seamus. I'm a CPA here in Hanford, and I'm co-creator for the Portuguese history of Kings County.
And I'm Kathy Mendes Gully. I grew up in Riverdale. I'm the granddaughter of Azorean immigrants Antonio Ferreira and Maria C. Rocha Mendes.
Well, for myself, I felt I was very fortunate that I was able to get to know my grandparents who immigrated here to the United States and heard firsthand their stories regarding their travel, the decision to come to the United States, the travel here, the hardships, and the successes that they had by being here. And it's a story that has been repeated over and over again by different Portuguese families within the area here on the sacrifice that for myself, my grandparents made for them to come here and to make a good life for themselves and their family. And it's because of them is how I become successful.
Well, I always knew that I'm part of a large community of Portuguese Americans, mostly Azorean Americans here in Kings County. And I knew that some of the stories were fascinating, and the more I researched different families, the more I realized they were all very similar and each very unique. And I visited the Carnegie Museum a couple of years ago and just envisioned that this would be a perfect place to share this story that doesn't just belong to me, but to so many people like me. I'm a second American-born generation, and I'm so excited about the response from the community, because it started with just an idea that we threw out there, and little by little people had things they wanted to share. Not everyone had a lot of things, but by the time several families brought a little of this and a little of that, we had enough for this beautiful exhibit that's been very well received and well attended, and just created a lot of excitement for the community, and now we're looking forward to Exhibit 2.
When we decided to do this particular exhibit, it was a consensus of the board of the Kings County, the museum, that we wanted to be able to do a port of entry type follow through of our families, our immigrant entrance into the country, and then give some examples of some of the articles that they brought with them, such as passports and luggage, and just some items that reflected upon the parts of their country that they came from. We have flowers, the wine jug. We even have some documents that show the passport and the citizenship papers, and then there's even like some of the old luggage that was brought. There was the families saved all the years, and all the different items that have come through. We were very lucky to get these banners from, what was it from Portuguese?
Pico.
No, who gave us?
Portuguese Beyond Borders
Portuguese
Institute
Beyond Borders
of Fresno State
brought us these banners, which were very good for our exhibit, and just love to have all the different. What I was very happy to see was the amount of people that came and read everything. They did not just wander through really quick. They read and looked at the articles and the documents and the pictures. They had lots of questions, or more importantly, they even had lots of stories, which was always enjoyable to hear.
Many of these people, although they within their own families knew their stories, they had not shared their stories with other people. And so once the opportunity came up for them to share, they were a little surprised and a little curious and a little interested, and started to get involved in this, well then they became very comfortable with telling their story. Like in the case of Bernadette Becerra Andrade. When I talked to her about it, her feeling was, well, I don't really have a lot, but when she showed me what she had and I told her how we could use it here as part of our display, she became very enthusiastic about it and ended up, she may not have a lot of things, but when we put it together with other people's things, it does create a complete and total exhibit.
Yeah, we were fortunate because there were a lot of people that had maybe 2 or 3 important items from their grandparents or parents, and by taking those items and combining them with other people, we were able to tell a much broader story of the travel and settling of the area here. And it was really great to see. It gave us a lot of confidence in terms of being able to say, okay, when we start the next exhibit or the next chapter of this exhibit, we know what we need to do, and we have people already waiting to bring stuff to us so that we can do the next exhibit even better than what we did here.
I love that we've been able to connect with other organizations that are from outside of Kings County who have, over the past several years, with their own Azorean community, created their own type of exhibits in other communities. And once they heard about our exhibit, we're very excited to lend their support to us. And especially with Exhibit 1, when we weren't sure what we would have to share, they offered things that really, although these came from Sacramento, they still are related to some of our people here in Kings County who are from the same island. So people from the islands can recognize these clothing, and we're just real thankful for the opportunity that other communities who have done this before have been able to step in and help us.
One of the parts of the exhibit that I think was a big success was the put a pin on the map of where your ancestors came from. And what I found interesting was that in some islands they look like porcupines, and in some islands they look like lone little pin here in Corvo and some here in Flores. And then you look at the middle section and you see just how many people that were from Kings County, that came to Kings County, were from this part of the Azore Islands. And it was just interesting to see some of them even trying to find the name of the village where their grandparents came from so they could put the pin on the right spot.
This has been a big hit,
Yeah.
and it speaks volumes to the kind of pride that the Portuguese people have for their home islands and their home village. And also that it helps us understand that if someone from a village in the Azores came to Kings County and found work here, he would write home to his family and friends and say, hey, I'm here in Hanford and these people are hiring. So it's not uncommon to find groups of people from the same village on the Azores, even 100 years later, their descendants all still living in the same town here in Kings County, because they would come and join each other here.
Yeah.
And so the majority of the people that live in Kings County or have their roots in Kings County are from the central section of islands there, where they would all communicate with each other. Hey, there's jobs here in Stratford, come on out.
Yeah. Several of these 4 that are here were actual postcards that were loaned to our exhibit, in which we scanned and had them printed out on a large size so you could see what's going on. And these depict the activity of the Portuguese bullfight, which I think is a misnomer. We should call it the Portuguese bull tackle. It's not so much to fight to kill the bull, but it's to tackle the bull or grab the tail. And so these are great shots because it just shows the excitement that everybody had for the bullfights. And even this one here is a very, very interesting photo because of how it's depicted, showing the movement of the cow or the bull, the movement of the matador, and everybody's eyes are all looking at the moment. And it's a wonderful image that shows the excitement that was built for this event.
What I love about Portuguese bullfighting is that they don't kill the bull.
Yeah.
Mostly they tease the bull, and but these islands are small. There's obviously not a lot to do. So over the last couple of centuries, going to the bullfights was a very important thing. It was a social event as well as a cultural event, and I can't tell you probably how many young couples met seeing each other for the first time at a bullfight, because when one village had a bullfight, everybody from the other villages would come, and it was a big social event, but a big part of the Portuguese culture as well.
When I first started dating my wife, she's not Portuguese. We went to a Portuguese bullfight over at the St. John's Hall, and she was just, I don't even think she could even describe how she felt when she saw people jumping in the ring with the ball. And I was laughing because I was laughing more at her reaction than laughing at what was going on with the people with the ball. So it was interesting.
And it is a tradition that has carried over to the United States. A lot of Portuguese organizations, including here locally, the Riverdale Portuguese Hall, even in Layton, at the Layton Church, a couple of times during the year, they will have a traditional Portuguese bullfight here, which again, the bull isn't injured, it's only teased, but it's becoming very popular here with third and fourth generation American-born Portuguese.
I'm past the age of doing that. There's no way to get up there.
And then in our display case here, we have some things that, for somebody like me that grew up with these things in my house, they don't seem all that unique, because everybody's Portuguese family had these hand-crocheted bedspreads, tablecloths, doilies. For young girls growing up, learning these homemaking skills was very important. That was part of learning how to grow up and become a good wife, was to learn how to use needlepoint. So, and often these things would get used and eventually destroyed, but in the last few generations, we've come to see the value in these handmade items. So now they're mostly just for display and not used so that they don't get destroyed. But you can take a look at them and see the hours of time that went into making them.
Well, my mother made a lot of these types of articles, and my children, my two daughters, they find them valuable possessions now. They're very happy to have those, and they see the work that went into that. And so when my mom passed away, they were very happy to divide this up amongst themselves, because to them it was a special treasure to have this type of artifact as part of their family heritage.
So this little part of the exhibit is about my family, which is what I know. This is my what I was familiar with. And this was why I thought we need to have an exhibit like this, because I'm not the only one with these beautiful family stories. And so my suggestion in doing an exhibit here was for everyone to get to share their stories. And for the people that don't know their family history, to hopefully generate some kind of curiosity or enthusiasm within them to find their own family stories. Because with the internet today and with Ancestry.com and things like that, it's very easy to figure things out. So I started with what I knew and encouraged other people to participate with what they knew. And it all really has fallen into place. And we have generated a curiosity and an enthusiasm. But the example of my family is that my great-grandmother was living on the island of Treseda. She was married and had just given birth to her fourth son when her husband died. And there were no social programs for women in 1901 on the island, so she had to figure out a way to survive. So she sent her two middle boys to the orphanage, and she kept her oldest boy at home to take care of the cows, and her newborn at home, and found work as a wet nurse and a midwife. And her two middle sons were educated at the orphanage, where they learned 5 languages. They were taught a trade and prepared for the priesthood. But when the monarchy was overthrown in 1910 and threw the country of Portugal into chaos, that started to dwindle down and reach the islands. And in 1911, my great-grandmother had the opportunity to reunite her family and come to the United States. And they settled first in Stratford and eventually my grandfather in Riverdale, and raised their family there. And growing up, I knew they were from the islands. I knew they started a dairy. I had no idea the beauty of the story of their childhoods, their immigration, and their struggle. And I do know that my grandfather said at one time, the first year he was here, it was so hot that if there was a road back to Treseda, he would have walked all the way home. But my family was able to make a good living here, and therefore I've enjoyed the good life being an American citizen, and turns out other people have had the same experience.
Well, I drew from the stories that I had heard as a small child and a young man regarding my grandparents' journey to the United States. I think the part that really struck me and still makes me even just almost in disbelief was that all my grandparents left with their parents when they were between the age of 13 and 18, and they never saw their parents again, and they lived until their 90s. And so it's it's kind of, when you look at your own children and you realize that you may never see them again, it really does hit home. I was fortunate to also have family photos that tell the story in some respect. The 3 photos that are in the back on the wall there represent my father's family, the Sema side, and over here this is my grandfather getting married to my grandmother, and then the picture in the middle are my mom's parents on their wedding day. That's their wedding photo. And so to have the pictures, to be able to draw into looking at what happened, the happiest moments of their lives, it's a great artifact to have for the family, so they can say that your grandparents were young once, they experienced life just like you, and they had the same joys and same heartbreaks as we do. And so it was, I'm very happy to be able to have those photos. I'm even more happier to be able to share them, and so that people can see just just an example of families that lived here at the time. My dad's father came to Riverdale. He actually ended up out in Burrell. They had the first dairy out there. My mom's father came here in 1913, at age 13 at 1900, and went to go work in Wairika. And so he ended up down here in the Lemoore area and bought a ranch in Hardwick in 1912. So that's where the family is.
So in this window, we're looking at some memorabilia connected to the Machado family. And the Machado family is connected to my family, which is why I happen to have some of their things. But what I wanted to get other people to pay attention to and to realize in this is that this box here has copies of letters that are more than 125 years old. Starting in 1906, when this young couple came to the United States, they were receiving letters in the mail from their family on the island of Treseda. 1906. It probably took 6 months for a letter to get from someone's hand in Treseda all the way here to the United States. But they all talk about the loneliness that they feel with their children who have come to the United States. And what is important is that I want people to realize, as we begin to lose our grandparents and our parents, and these things come into our possession, we may not be able to read them, we may not be able to recognize all the faces in these photos, but it is so important to preserve them. And someone recognized the value of these old letters before they got tossed into a trash can. And now they're a part of the permanent collection at Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute in Fresno, because they are full of history. And that is something I want every guest at the museum to realize is what I have. I'm not sure who these people are, I'm not sure what this is about, but if my grandparents kept it for 50 years and then my parents kept it for 50 years, maybe I should find out what this is. And there are resources that can help us translate things, but these are the things that make us who we are. These are the artifacts that tell our family stories, so let's try to preserve them and share them.
After my grandparents died, my mom and my dad were in possession of many different items that my grandparents had for their entire lives. And over a period of time, I've been able to either acquire them or have family loan them to us for this exhibit. These two different display cases show two particular items that I find are quite fascinating. This particular display case shows my grandfather, Frank Pereira. His name was actually Frank Perry, in the United States, about age 18. And one of his prized possessions was his homemade violin. And so we've been able to save this from the ash heap, and it's now part of the Perry family archive, so to speak, which is at my house. We also have here his naturalization papers, which showed that he became an American citizen. He was very, very proud to have become an American citizen, and this was in the safe deposit box at Bank of America when he died. This other items here, this was loaned to us from a family member. This is my dad's mother's original passport. My grandmother, Seamus, was originally a Mello. She was born in Rhode Island, and at age 3, her and her father and her 2 older sisters went back to the Azores, where her father remarried after her original mother died. This shows here the passport. It shows when she came to the United States. This is the actual ticket that she had for the SS Patria, which was the boat she came over on, and the receipt of how much she paid for the ticket. She traveled second class. She paid $135 in 1928, which is almost $2,200 today. So I always wondered where'd you get the money. But these are just some great artifacts that, again, families may not realize they have these and they just toss them. And so you have to be very careful when you're going through items of your parents or grandparents that passed away. Why did they hang on to this? What was so important to them? And you have to learn to be able to hang on to it so you pass it on to future generations to enjoy as well. One of the items that we were very fortunate to use in this exhibit were the pictures that were copied over the last 40 to 45 years by Scott and Aldrin Circa Alston. They made it their mission to document the stories and lives of the original Portuguese settlers in Fresno, Kings, and Tulare counties. And they went so far as to actually take copies of the original photos that these people had. And this is an example of some of they're just fabulous photos. They capture moments in time, and I've had many people come up to me outside of the museum here pointing. They had taken pictures with their phone of these photos saying, I know who this person was, I know who this person was, this is my grandfather, this is my great uncle. And it was really interesting to hear their stories. This picture in particular caused quite an uproar in the Dutra family, because this was the great-grandfather, Manuel Dutra, who came to the United States in the 1870s and purchased property northeast of Hanford, which is still in the family's name today. And so these were the grandparents of the children that are alive today. It was thought that this picture was lost in a fire, and come to find out, one of the this little girl right here was in her 80s when the Serpas or the Alstons interviewed her, and she had the original picture in her possession. They took a photo of it, and that picture is now up in Washington State. And when I go up and see my granddaughter this summer, I'm going to take my scanner and scan the original photo so that we can have even a better example of that photo there. But it was just, they were all like, where did you find that photo? Because they thought that was lost forever. And so it was interesting. Then over here, we've got the Teixeira family. The Teixeira family still lives here in the county. And this is the wedding of the great-grandparents. This is the family when they were sheep herders out on the west side. And this was on the steps of Eureka School, which was on the corner of 7th and Fargo. And one of those women in there was Mary, Teixeira ended up marrying Dr. DeCampos. So it was Mary DeCampos there. And then this was down in Corcoran, it was the Martin family. All the descendants still live here today. And so it was just really interesting to see these pictures come out and actually capture moments in time for the descendants, in which they were very excited to see them.
It's very important to note that these hundreds and hundreds of people who left their villages and came to the United States, they didn't come for religious persecution or anything like that. They came for opportunity. They came for an opportunity to make a life for themselves. And they embraced America. They were very proud to become Americans. And even if you look back in the Hanford Sentinel in the last 150 years, you'll see that there were news stories about people taking their citizenship classes so that they could become Americans. And when they got their citizenship papers, their names were in the paper, they were very proud of that. And so, although they always had a special place in their heart for their home and their village, and Portugal and the Azores were very important to them, they came here to become Americans, and that's what they strived for. They all worked to get their naturalization. It was a big deal to them, and they wanted to raise their children to be American, to speak English, and to become a part of this this country where they had opportunities that were not available to them at home. And these are the stories of our lives and of our families. And the Carnegie Museum Board of Directors and the volunteer docents that are here have been remarkable in understanding why we wanted to share our stories and allowing us to do so. The docents have embraced the material and learned about the Azorean people and their experiences and shared it so beautifully with our guests. And I will say too that when we did have our docent training and we talked about people coming here to see these exhibits, I made a prediction that probably the docents wouldn't have to do a lot of talking. That the Portuguese people are a proud, hardworking people. They're usually just out taking care of their business. But when given the opportunity, they are going to tell you their story, and that has certainly been true. And any of them that you talk to that I've talked to have said, we had the greatest group of people come in today who had stories to share, and they would see something that reminded them of one of their stories. And it's just been a beautiful relationship between the Carnegie, the board, the docents, and the Portuguese community. And I am forever grateful.